That year, our class split into two groups for an internship trip. The first group that went ahead warned us about packing, keeping documents in order, and then, almost like a joke, they said, "Be careful when staying at hotels." Some of them are haunted. At first, the trip went smoothly. We traveled across states, visiting places, eating, sleeping on the bus or at inns, always rushing to the next stop. Everyone was excited, and the warnings about ghosts slowly faded into the background. On the way back south, we stopped for the night at a mid-sized hotel just off the highway. From the outside, it looked newly renovated. Bright lobby, polished floors, friendly receptionist. After a week of traveling, all we wanted was a hot shower and a real bed. I was the one who went up to get the keys for my group. Our room was on the first floor, just at the top of the stairs. The moment I opened the door, every hair on my arm stood on end. A chill slid down the back of my neck. I didn't say anything to my friends, chalked it up to exhaustion. The bathroom in this room was unusually large, nearly a third of the room's size. Yellowish light from a single round bulb cast odd shadows across the tiled walls. There was only a small vent high up near the ceiling. I went in first. When I turned on the shower, nothing came out. I waited 5 minutes, still nothing. I stepped out, annoyed. My roommate went in, and the water flowed just fine. I tried again. Dry pipes. The front desk guy came, tested it, and the water worked perfectly. I went back inside. After a few minutes, the water cut out again. That happened over and over until nearly half an hour later, I managed to finish my shower, feeling uneasy. The others decided to go out for a late-night snack, local food they were excited about. I stayed back, too tired to move. I turned on the TV. 10 minutes in, the screen flickered and went black. I shrugged, turned to my phone, and left every light in the room on, even the bathroom light. When I finally drifted off, the bathroom door creaked. It shifted slightly as if someone was pushing it from the inside. There was no window, no draft. My chest tightened. Am I really experiencing this? Then it hit. A crushing weight pressed down on me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My lips trembled as I tried to whisper a prayer, but no sound came out. I lay there frozen for what felt like 15 endless minutes. Finally, voices echoed from the hallway. Friends from the next room returning. As they laughed loudly outside, the weight lifted. I sat up, drenched in sweat, gasping. I told myself it was over. I even tried to go back to sleep. But around midnight, it came again. This time, I saw her. A figure stood over me. A woman with short cropped hair, dressed in a loose white shirt. A massive cross hung from her neck. Her build was heavy-set, her eyes cold. She held a towel stretched tight across my throat. I thought it was my roommate playing a cruel prank. "Cut it out, I'm not joking," I tried to shout. But my voice cracked, choked off. My body was pinned again. No matter how much I prayed or struggled, nothing worked. The moment my roommates returned and opened the door, everything broke. I bolted upright, threw the blanket aside, and rushed out of the room, pale as death. They had to hold me up. I nearly fainted. That night, I refused to sleep. I played a protective chant on loop from my phone until dawn. The next morning at breakfast, a girl from the room across told us something else. When she dragged her suitcase up the stairs late last night, she'd seen a white shadow drift past the landing, then vanish. I wasn't the only one who saw her. Back in 2004, I was working for a major telecom company and was sent to a small mountain town out west to check in on some local dealers and run a bit of training. It was past 11 p.m. when my driver and I returned to a small roadside hotel near a quiet lake. We'd had a little too much wine at dinner and were exhausted from a long day, so we collapsed onto the twin beds in our room, shoes still on. Normally, drivers slept in their cars or in cheap loft spaces, but I always invited him to share a proper room with me. I figured if he was well rested, he'd drive safer. I was deep asleep when he suddenly shook me awake. I cracked an eye open and saw him trembling, eyes wide with fear. His voice shook as he stammered, You were sleeping, right? Then who was just pulling on my leg?" I groaned, too tired to care. "Man, I'm not messing with you." "Just go back to sleep," I rolled over. But not long after, he shook me again. This time his face was ghostly pale. He pointed at the end of the bed, his voice breaking. God, oh God! Without another word, he bolted downstairs and begged the front desk to let him crash on their couch until morning. The next day, on the drive out of town, he told me what happened. When I was sleeping, I felt something grabbing my ankle, shaking it hard. The bed was trembling. I opened my eyes, saw you still asleep, and tried to ignore it. But then it happened again. Cold fingers, wrapping around my ankle, pulling. I looked down and saw them. Two pale hands clutching me. Just hands. No body. Nothing else. He shook his head, still pale. That's when I ran. I stayed quiet. I hadn't seen or felt a thing all night. I'll never forget that night. We were on a family trip with a tour, me, my dad, and a handful of our friends from home. Mom couldn't come because of work, so it was just Dad and me. The grown men went off after dinner to play cards and drink. It was one of those no kids, no women kind of tables. So I ended up sharing a room with my dad's close friend, my family's friend, who everyone jokingly called Aunt, and her son. Everything felt normal until the middle of the night. Because there was a little kid in the room, the lights were all off. Only the hallway lamp spilled a thin strip of light through the open door. I remembered falling asleep, but then, suddenly, a loud, hard knock on the door jolted me upright. The knock was big enough to make me sit bolt upright. I glanced toward the doorway and, in the dim silhouette, saw a large shadow the size of my dad. I assumed it was him and started to get up to open the door. Lie back down. What are you doing up? Aunt cut me off, her voice firm. I tried to tell her the shadow was Dad, but when I looked again, the shape was gone. I couldn't argue, so I lay back down. A little while later, half asleep and hazy, I felt it. Somebody grabbed my ankle and yanked. Hard. It pulled me so suddenly that my feet swung down farther than they should have. The bed was high and my feet normally didn't reach the floor. But with that tug, my toes touched the carpet. I froze, terrified, but saw nothing. I stuffed my fear down and lay back, but sleep wouldn't come. My heart wouldn't calm. Then, as if something else pushed me toward it, I found myself staring at the wardrobe. I don't know why my eyes were glued there, but they were. The wardrobe door swung open all by itself. I was already shaking, ready to scream, when I saw him. Only I could see him. A tall man stood in the dim corner by the wardrobe, looking straight at me. He was unusually lanky and unnaturally still. He smiled at me, that kind of slow, wrong smile that makes your stomach drop. I lost it. I screamed and cried until I couldn't anymore. The next thing I remember is nothing. I blacked out. When I came to, I was in a hospital room, lights bright and people around me. My dad was there. I remember asking, "Did you come in and call my name last night?" He looked puzzled and said no. Aunt later told me she thought it was a spirit messing with me. Back at the hotel, she asked the manager about our room. That's when he told her something that made my blood run cold. About a year earlier, a tall man had checked into that exact room and hanged himself. No one ever found out why. Maybe I was just sensitive, or maybe whatever it was that night picked me out. But whatever it wasn't interested in anyone else in the room. It found me. I picked up the graveyard shift because I still had classes during the day. I worked from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. It was my first job there, and for the first month or so, I kept hearing the same thing between about 2 and 4 in the morning. Footsteps on the stairwell, clear as day, like the click-click of high heels coming down from the fourth floor toward the front desk. I could always tell by the sound. Those little taps were definitely stiletto heels. To explain how I slept, I worked until the lobby was empty, usually around 1 a.m. Then I locked the doors and rolled out a thin foam mat right behind the counter so I could sleep close by in case any late checkouts happened. The overnight security guard crashed just outside the door on a bench. Every time I heard that click-click on the stairs, I would jolt up and squint at the security camera, checking who was checking out so I could pull the bill and get the guard to bring the guest's car around. But every time I checked the feed, there was nobody on camera. I'd stay awake for 10 minutes waiting, Nothing would happen. I'd lie back down and barely drift off. Then the heels would click again. I'd groan, push myself up, check the monitor, and nothing. This happened night after night. I'm not usually a coward, but after the first month, I stopped sleeping properly. Eventually, I got used to it, or I learned to ignore it. If someone actually showed up and knocked, I'd get up. But otherwise, I stopped checking the monitors every time. About a year later, the story escalated. It was Valentine's Day and two women checked in for the night. They were gorgeous, and honestly, I thought they were a little out of place. Total couple energy. I was half asleep when I heard them scream and come tearing down the stairs. One of them told me later that she had just climbed into bed when something grabbed her, put a hand on her shoulder and said, "Move. This isn't your room to sleep in." She turned, saw a pale man's face in the corner, and ran screaming out the door. Everyone woke up. After that, the hotel's reputation tanked. People started saying there was something off about the place, and business dropped for a while. I wasn't scared enough to quit. I needed the money, and the hours fit my classes. After a while, customers returned, and I kept working. Then it happened to me. I remember that night like it was yesterday. I'd locked the front and just laid out my mat. I must have been drifting when a voice whispered near my head, "Hey, I'm so hungry." It sounded like a middle-aged woman. I snapped awake at any voice, so I looked around. There was nobody. The guard was still out on the bench, snoring. Figuring I was just tired, I lay back down. Not long after, something stronger hit me. Not just a whisper, but pressure, like someone pressing on my chest and a hand on my shoulder. This time it wasn't just one voice, but several, layered together. "Hey, I'm so hungry," an older woman's voice. "Hey, hey," a young woman's voice. When I opened my eyes, there was a small kid, maybe 8, sitting at the foot of the stairwell, staring at me. Instinct made me fumble for the light switch and flip it on. As the lobby flooded with light, the stairwell was empty. Nothing. No woman. No kid. Nothing at all. That's when my gut turned tight. I'd heard about the other guests freaking out and figured maybe they'd been spooked. But now it was happening to me. I woke the guard and told him. He just shrugged and admitted quietly, "I get pressed down sometimes, but I don't say anything. Ms. Chu won't stand for staff talking about ghosts." The owner was notorious for yelling if staff brought up ghost stories, so he'd rather keep quiet than lose his job. We left the lights on and sat together until dawn. I don't think either of us slept. After that, I stopped trying to nap during a shift. I started bringing a few beers with me to stay awake. I'd sit behind the counter, light on, sipping to keep my nerves steady. The guard told me to carry a knife, some kind of big kitchen blade, and tuck it near my pillow. As dumb as it sounds, it helped me feel a little safer. When I slept, I'd wedge that knife under my headboard and, strangely, I stopped getting pinned. Even so, I still heard the heels on the stairs some nights, and sometimes the sound of kids running and playing near where I slept. The whole place had this rhythm, proof you weren't alone, but proof nobody else could see or hear the thing that came around in the dark. This happened in April. My friends and I had planned a night out. Some of us went to a club, others split off. By about 1 a.m., there were only 4 of us left. Me, Taylor, my ex, Brandon, my close friend Kayla, and her cousin Mia. Houses for the others were too far or not an option, and Brandon and I lived several neighborhoods away. So instead of going home, we decided to keep going and end up at an after-hours lounge with private rooms. We hung out until our throats hurt, until around 5 a.m. when we were totally exhausted. We tried to find a hotel after that. Most places were closed, but finally we found one that still had a lit sign and an open desk. Something in my gut gave me the creeps, but we were too tired to care. We checked in and took the elevator to the back of the 5th floor. The room was tucked in the corner. When the elevator doors opened, Mia grabbed my hand. "Taylor, I just saw that room's door slowly open by itself," she whispered. I told her she was tired and imagined it. But we all felt a little off as we stood at the doorway. Out of habit, I knocked 3 times and, "Stupid thing to do," I muttered under my breath. "We ask permission of any spirits that live here to let us stay the night." As we stepped in, the ceiling light near the door flickered on and off, even though none of us touched the switch. All four of us froze. A quick description of the room. The hallway outside was dim. The room's layout had a round ceiling light over the entry, a bathroom with a full tub immediately left of the door, two double beds pushed toward the left wall near the bathroom, and opposite the beds a table and a standing mirror that looked weirdly old-fashioned, like some ancestor portrait set up. There was also an ornate, antique wardrobe pressed along the wall beside one bed. Then I looked into the bathroom. I swear, there were four bodies in the tub. Two men and two women, all pale and purple, eyes shut, blood everywhere like they'd just killed themselves. My heart nearly exploded. I didn't scream. I told the others quietly to push the beds together to feel safer. Kayla and Mia freaked and said they'd go into the bathroom together to be freshen up, while Brandon and I waited. Brandon conked out almost immediately. The jerk fell asleep right away when I told him to stay awake. I tried to lie there and keep it together. A few minutes later, Kayla and Mia came out. Kayla said, "Did you and Brandon stand in front of the bathroom and talk a second ago?" I said, "No way, I've been out here the whole time." That's when we all knew we'd seen something. The three of them scrambled into bed, and because they were so terrified, I ended up on the outer edge, next to Kayla. I thought maybe if I closed my eyes I could make it through to morning. 5 minutes later, I opened them drenched in sweat. Opposite the foot of our beds, something was sitting, something looking at the four of us. I didn't see a clear, defined figure like in movies. It was more like a presence, solid enough that my instincts screamed at me. I told Mia to wake up and to put things on every seat she could reach, chairs, the top of the dresser, even the fridge top, and to cover the tall mirror. I don't know why, but covering that mirror felt necessary. Mia obeyed immediately. The clock read about 4:30 a.m. I tried to rest, then opened my eyes again. Near the wardrobe, the one by where Brandon was sleeping, a man hovered close to the corner. For some reason, he seemed to target me. I grabbed Kayla's hand so hard she flinched and asked, "Why are you sweating like crazy?" I couldn't answer. I glanced back and he'd gone. I told everyone, "It's okay. He's gone now." And finally, exhausted, I drifted off. We checked out around 10 a.m. In the elevator, Mia pointed out that the room's door had slowly swung closed again after we left. After we told the desk what we'd seen, word spread, and we learned that room had a history. There were at least half a dozen spirits there, maybe more. I was the one that got messed with the most. Brandon? He saw nothing. Ever since then, I never stay out that late. Nights out and at home.